Camino planning. I've been promising a more detailed planning video. It's taken me a while, but this is it, coming right up. So since my last planning video, I did promise or ask that if you wanted a detailed one, I would do one. And lots of people asked, and apologies it's taken me so long to get back to doing it. I was kind of struggling, to be honest, with how do I do this without making it a 2-hour video. So hopefully this is going to be under 30 minutes. And we're going to do it like a little bit of a case study because we're going to plan somebody's Camino. So I'm actually capturing, hopefully, let me just double check. Yeah, we are capturing my computer. And so I'm going to show you on there with one of my detailed planning spreadsheets and a few other things how I actually go through planning my Caminos. Let me preface all of this because on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being no planning whatsoever, I tend to plan my Caminos probably at a level 7 or 8. For most people, I way over plan. So you do not need to do this, okay? Number one caveat, you do not need to do this level of planning. But a lot of people have asked for it, so here it is. Why do I go to this level of planning? I actually enjoy doing it. Do I follow this plan, bit by bit when I'm walking? Absolutely not. I use this planning as a little bit of research of the route. To get an idea of how many days I need to walk it and things like that. I don't stick to it that much, but because I actually go through it in quite a detailed process, it gives me a really good idea of what's along the route and alternative routes or side routes that I might have. Anyway, you'll see it as we go through. So we're going to do this as a live case study because Mack is going off to walk the Camino Frances in March of 2025. And I reached out to Mack on Eva's forum and said, hey Mack, I think maybe he asked a question or something. And I said, why don't we use your Camino as a bit of a planning exercise? So I wish I hadn't said that because I haven't actually done this recently on the Camino Frances, but we're going to go through it. So let's just have a look at the screen here and we'll talk about Mack for a minute. So Mack is male, he's 61, he reckons he's pretty fit. He cycles 3 or 4 times a week and he does weights. He wants to use private accommodation and he's probably going to use luggage transport. Well, you should try and carry your stuff, Mack, if you're as fit as you make out. And we're going to go through the process then that I use, and we're going to use Mack's criteria. Walking, I think he mentioned he could walk about 25 k's a day, private accommodation, all that kind of stuff. So we'll use Mack's criteria to plan this Camino Frances. And I'll take you through the steps that I would generally use. I will mention, in case I forget, because Mack wants to use private accommodation, because he's walking on probably the most popular route out of the lot, Camino Frances, I would suggest booking the first couple of nights ahead of time. He's going in March, so it's kind of just before the peak. April, May gets really busy. If you were going in April, May, I would say book as far as Pamplona. After that, you'll have a sense of how busy it is, and I generally just book 1 or 2 days ahead. You kind of need to do that on the Frances these days, I think. I haven't walked it for 5 or 6 years. I tell a lie, I walked a bit of it 3 or 4 days last year and it was pretty busy. This gets complicated. Because you're using private accommodation, I would say book 1 or 2 days ahead. If you're using albergues, particularly Municipal and Donativo albergues, generally you can't book those. I would be less stressed because they don't kind of fill up as much as the private accommodation. So there we go. Anyway, Mack's going to be using private accommodation. He may or may not use luggage transport. So let's just have a look at the key steps here that I go through when I'm planning my Camino. First of all, I'm going to pick the route. So in this case, it's the Camino Frances. I then do a rough schedule, and I'll show you how I do that, because Max says he's going to go in early March. He'd like to get to Santiago kind of before Easter. You've got to have a bit of an idea, particularly if, like me, you're traveling from the other side of the world. You need to have a rough idea of how long you're going to be walking, what the transit time is, and so that you can book flights and things like that. So we'll talk about a rough schedule. You might want to check out a guidebook. This is non-commercial. I have no affiliation with any guidebooks. I've mentioned before I love the John Brearley guidebooks. Unfortunately, John passed away a couple of years ago. His guidebooks are wonderful. I love them for the maps. He was actually a map maker, I think, or a cartographer. I don't carry the physical book. I carry the sort of Kindle version. There's lots of other ones. This one's for the Via de la Plata. This one from Wise Pilgrim. I've got lots of his too. He has probably the most popular apps for walking the Camino. So look at the Wise Pilgrim apps. Again, no commercial interest. I have most of his apps for the different routes and so on. So whenever I'm talking about a guidebook, think online, phone app as well, similar sort of usage. So I would check out some guidebooks. I always use the website Gronze for planning. I'm going to show you that. If it's a new route for me, I tend to look at YouTube to see what it's going to be like. And then I do a much more detailed schedule once I've got that rough schedule done. So I'm going to show you all of that. And we've got about 22 minutes to go. So let's get on with it. So I'll just remind you again, this is kind of Rob's over-the-top planning, because I know people are going to jump on and go, you don't need to do that level of planning, and that's way over the top. True. I just like doing it. It's fun. It keeps my interest going on the Camino, in between Caminos. Some of us like to plan to the nth degree. Some like to just turn up with a backpack and walk. That's fine too. But anyway, let's get on now. We're going to look at the, what's the schedule here? Oh, I was going to do a rough schedule first. So let's go on to the next tab. And here we have got, let me zoom in so we can see it okay on the video. No, it's not complicated. So I've got a simple little spreadsheet here, which I think you can download on the website. I'll show you in a minute. So I've got the departure date. I'm not sure where you're based, Mac. I think you're in the US, aren't you? So I've got 2 transit days. You might have 1 or 2 transit days. That tells me I'm going to be starting on a Friday in Saint-Jean. Start dates, particularly out of a very popular place like Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, I would generally not start on a Saturday, Sunday. Monday's probably better, because a lot of Europeans will start at the weekend. Friday's probably going to be a popular day as well. And so if you want a quieter day, midweek might be better. So what I've got down here is that in 2025, Easter Sunday's on the 20th of April. So I've got Mack arriving on the 18th of April. For the sake of the exercise, let's just leave a couple of days earlier. So we'll do the 10th of March, which means we're leaving Saint-Jean midweek on a Wednesday. Obviously, Mack's going to play around with all of this. So we've got some transit days, tells me my start date. We're roughly 800 kilometres walking to Santiago. Max talked about walking 25 k's a day. That works out at 32 walking days. I think you need to plan for rest days, Mac, even if you don't use them. And this is a little bit of a trap that newbie pilgrims fall into. So, Mac, you say you cycle 3 or 4 times a week and you lift weights and all the rest of it. It's great that you're fit, buddy, but walking a Camino, as you yourself said to me, is a totally different kettle of fish. I think you said, I can walk 25 k's a day, but I don't know if I can do it for day after day for a month. That's the point. It really does sort of start to weigh you down a bit, day after day after day. So don't be overly optimistic. I think if you're reasonably fit, 25 k's a day is probably a good planning figure. I've seen a lot of younger people, bullet a gate, sort of race across the start line, walking 30, 35 k's a day, and by the time you get to Burgos, they're going home because they're injured. 25 k's a day, I think, is a good planning figure. If you walk faster than that, further than that, that's fine. But what we're doing here is a rough plan to know how long we're going to be away and booking travel and things like that. So we've got 32 walking days. We plan 3 days rest days. I don't always take those. I was trying to think last year, how many rest days did I have? Merida, Salamanca, Pomperada. I had 3 rest days over 60 days last year. Oh, in Santiago, 4 in 60 days. So total days on Camino will be 35. So you're going to arrive, I mean, you're not going to arrive necessarily on this date. It depends how you go. You know, this is not a rigid timetable. It's a rough estimate. But roughly you would arrive midweek and a couple of transit days. So play around with, you know, that sort of idea to at least get a sense of when you might start and when you might finish. In reality, I find when I'm walking, so last year, for example, I walked for 60 days. I think I finished about 3 days ahead of my initial schedule because I always plan conservatively so that I, particularly with, you know, booking flights and things, I don't want to be rushing. So I'd much rather have a couple of spare days up my sleeve and, you know, go sightseeing or something. So that's the rough plan. We're going to be on the Camino for about 35 days. Now, I mentioned going back to some of the earlier planning, some of the planning tools that I use. So check out the guidebooks, they're always very useful. Things to look at, and if you have never walked a Camino before, a couple of things that I like in the John Brearley guidebooks are, first of all, these sort of the cover that opens out, and you know the maps are all day by day kind of thing. I'm sorry, John, but I actually, when I used the hard copy guidebooks, I used to rip all this out and just carry that bit, and I'd make little notes on it. And then the other thing to note, particularly in John's guidebooks, is really good. He has his sort of daily suggested route, and then he's got the profile as well, shows you what the sort of hills are going to be like. I'll show you where else you can access that right now. So a good guidebook is handy. We're going to look at Gronze in a second. But I also like to look at YouTube, not just because I have a YouTube channel, but I like to see what the terrain's going to be like and get a sense of, you know, what the scenery's like and so on. So let's just jump over to YouTube, hopefully. Ooh, that's not what I was looking for. Ooh, where's YouTube gone? Hold on. Have to edit this out. There we go. Here's YouTube. Let me just make sure I didn't turn off the recording. No, that's okay. So we're over at YouTube, and I have just searched for Camino Frances. Oh, we've got loads and loads of videos. You know, there's all styles of videos. This is a nice one, actually. Finding my way. I've watched lots of these. But if you want one which sort of shows the stages, somebody that I really like is Sarah Duma. So let's go and have a look at Sarah. I lose count, but I think Sarah's walked, I don't know, about 14 different Caminos. So here's her Camino Frances, which was a few years ago. Let me turn the sound off on that so we don't get all the music. But Sarah's videos are really good because she does a sort of a day-by-day thing. You can see here it's all the days for this particular route. She always shows her accommodation and what the route's like. Let's just skip through. Yeah, you get a real sense that's Saint-Jean heading down through the Spanish Gate on day one. So it gives you a good sense of what to expect. This is just below Horizon, getting up into the Pyrenees. So I like watching this stuff because it sort of creates a bit of anticipation and shows me what it's going to be like as well. That's Horizon. And what else have we got before we leave Sarah? Oh, she must have reached Ronce's. Oh, she's got a private room. Where's that? Oh, she's obviously staying part way up, probably at Border. Yeah, it looks like Border, which is sort of halfway to Roncesvalles. So YouTube is always, I think, an interesting thing. If you want to, you know, kind of see how other people have done it and see the route and the scenery and stuff like that, YouTube's a great resource. One that I use a lot when I'm on the Camino as well is Gronze. And what's Gronze all about? Gronze is actually a Spanish website, and if you're using like a Chrome browser, which I'm using here, it will translate it into English for you automatically. And let me go to Caminos, and Todos los Caminos shows you all the routes. So it's a fantastic planning tool. They also have an app which just has the sort of map features. The main website has a blog and all kinds of stuff. But we're going to pick the Camino Frances. This is pretty much what I use to plan my Caminos. And let's have a look at the first stage. Now, thing to note, we start off with the map. Saint-Jean to Roncesvalles is the first stage. You may or may not want to break up the route. If you're walking over the Napoleon route, Honto is a bit too early to stop. This is the really steep section coming up to Horizon. You can stop in Horizon or just past it at Auberge border. From there, there's nothing until you get to Roncesvalles. But Mack is walking in March, and the Napoleon route over the top of the Pyrenees is closed in March. I think it opens 1st of April, if the weather's all right. Both times I've gone on that route, it's been last week in April, and there's still been some snow around. They will tell you in the Pilgrim's office in Saint-Jean if the Napoleon route is open or not. But for you, Mack, walking in March, it won't be open. Definitely. They don't open it, I think, until 1st of April. But do check the date. So Mack is going to be walking the Valcarlos route, which I haven't walked, but apparently is really nice. Now, Mack, I would suggest, so we're going to do a lot of the planning on here. I would suggest that you don't try to get to Roncesvalles in the first day. It's within your sort of limit, 24 Ks, but it's day one. You've got a real steep climb towards the end of it. And I always suggest you ease into the Camino. Have a couple of easier days to begin with. You don't really want to, wear yourself out on day one. If you go below the maps on Gronze and click this little plus sign, it gives you the profile. This is actually going through Horizon. It looks like it doesn't have a profile for the Valcarlos alternative route, but I've looked at it in the past and it's fairly flat, I think, up to Valcarlos, and then very steep like this up towards the Ibaneta Pass. So you've got a pretty steep climb towards the end of the day. So if you're going to do that route in one day, fair enough, expect it's going to be a long day. I'd suggest you might want to stop in Valcarlos. So why isn't that clicking? Let's go back to, sorry, I haven't been on these. This is via Valcarlos. Okay, now it's going to show us the profile. There we go, see what I mean? After Valcarlos, it goes straight up. So what we do on here, now we can start looking at accommodation. So what have we got in Valcarlos? You want private rooms? We've got a few here. We've got 30 euros, 45. This is on the Camino route. 55, depending on what your budget is. Let's have a look at a couple of these. You'll notice they have reviews as well, just like on booking.com. So for a first time Camino, and if you're using predominantly private accommodation, I'd suggest you might want to just use booking.com. I'm sort of hesitant because it's not the be all and end all. It's extremely convenient. But as you can see just from this page, not every accommodation is going to be on there, is one thing. And secondly, they don't put all their beds on there. So for example, you might look at this particular pension and you find it's full. But if you ring them up, they've got a couple of beds. So don't be disheartened if it's full. You might want to ring up. They don't put all their beds on booking.com because they have to pay commissions for those. They'd rather sell them direct. And then of course, like this one, they're not on there at all. The other thing is that you'll pay slightly more on booking.com because the accommodation owners have to cover that commissions. So let's have a look at this pension. So you can see you've got the contact details, you can see where it is. I always want to see where it is on the map. So, you know, I want to be fairly central, you know. I haven't been through Valcarlos, but, you know, it's a lovely village on the way, so this looks fairly central. I would actually expand the map and look in a bit more detail. Any feedback? No, but if we want to book it, we can jump onto booking.com and we can see what it's like. Oh, very flash, Mack. And then we can see where it is on the map. We get a much better view on the map here. So quite often I'll use the map just to zoom in and okay, it seems fairly central, doesn't it? And then if I don't like that one, I can look at a couple of others, you know. I always look at the review scores. Don't sort of take them too literally, I was going to say. Everybody gets the odd bad review. Sometimes when you review these, you know, you can see, well, that person was obviously a bit of a dick and was going to complain about everything. You know, they've given them a 2 or something. I tend to look at, you know, what's the average score. Good scores for me are sort of 7+. So we can look at that one and book it, see, direct from the link from Gronze. Okay, so I'm just looking at the time. This is going to be a long video, sorry. So we can then start to continue our journey. Let's say, you know, we booked something for Valcarlos. Maybe we're going to have another short day just to get to Roncesvalles. There's not a lot in Roncesvalles. I hesitate to call it a village. I mean, it's an old monastery with a church, and there's a couple of guest houses, kind of that's it, and there's a bus stop, and a big sign that says 790 Ks. So you can see here there are 5 options. You've got the albergue, which in peak season, from sort of late April onwards, books out pretty quick. You can book it online. The Casa Sabina, which is private. I have had lunch there, which is really good. We've got the Posada, which is like 50 metres down the road. We've got the Hotel Roncesvalles, which is all part of the same building as the albergue. And then the apartments, which are again in the same building but at the top. So Pat and I have been there a couple of times and we've used the apartments, which were very nice. So again, if you're going to book one of those, you can jump on, have a look, read the reviews. Sorry, am I using? Yeah, it's going to translate. Here we go. Let's translate. There we go. Good service, clean and comfortable. Gets good feedback, doesn't it? So if I was going to go ahead and book that, you know, if you want to do it the easy way, jump onto booking.com. So this is kind of the process that I use as I'm going step by step through my planning. So that was fairly easy, you know, because it's your first day, you've got to climb towards the end. I'm saying, you know, if it was me, I wouldn't do 23.5 Ks on day 1. I would break it up. You can start leisurely from Saint-Jean. No need to leave too early, and then get into Roncesvalles at a good time. So it gives you, you know, a couple of days warm up. Then what's going to happen after this? So then you can start planning your next stages. And I'll show you on a spreadsheet in a minute how all this comes together. So I like to start off really slow with short stages. So from Roncesvalles, for example, a couple of times I've gone to Biscarreta because I didn't want to go all the way to Zubiri, even though it's only 21 Ks. Let's have a look at the profile. And I'll show you why I didn't want to go all the way. Up until here is pretty good, but then you've got this big descent down into Zubiri. There's 2 options here. You can actually walk down this road, which I've done once. I wouldn't advise it. It's not a particularly safe road, I think, with all the hairpins. And then last time with Pat, we went down this steep hill, which a lot of people sort of go, oh, it's scary and you're going to slip. And it wasn't that bad, actually, but it wasn't wet weather. So you might want to do that in one day or not. And then the next day, you know, you might want to walk through to Pamplona, it's 20 Ks and so on. Let me show you what I have planned so far if I was doing this. So we'll jump across back to the spreadsheet. So we looked at your rough schedule, and then we're going to go to Mack's plan. So this is the spreadsheet that I use generally when I'm planning. I'll explain a couple of things. What do these colours mean? So I put in the number of kilometres for each day, and then it comes up with a colour. If it's an easy day, it's going to show it green. which is under 15 k's. Average 15 to 25, it's just going to be a normal colour. And a long day, if it's 25 plus, that's a long day for me, it comes up red. It's just easy to spot while I'm planning. And I actually carry this spreadsheet on my phone while I'm walking. My spreadsheet has got about 50 tabs on it now because it's got all my Caminos, it's got my packing list, it's got my ready reckoner for Spanish phrases, it's got my budget, it's got everything on it. And that just sits on my phone. And whilst I don't follow the plan religiously, sometimes I kind of update it if I stay somewhere different, and I might update the distances, and it's just a little planning tool that I can be using while I'm walking if I want to. So what else have I got on here? So we've got the date, we've got the total days on Camino, we've got the number of walking days, we've got the distance. Here is the accumulated distance. So I've done this as far as Burgos, which is 270 k's. It's then showing the accumulated average k's per day. So by the time I get to Burgos, it's 20 k's. So when you say, you know, I'm happy to walk 25 k's a day, it's very hard to sort of do 25 k's every day. As you see, it depends where the villages are spaced out and accommodation and how you're feeling. You might do 20 one day, you might do 28, 30 the next. And then I've put in a rough speed. I tend to walk at about 3.5 k's an hour, and that includes all my breaks and stops and things like that. So it just gives me a rough idea of how long I'll be on the trail. So, you know, the first couple of days, it's only about 3.5 hours. Setting off from Roncesvalles down to Zubiri, it might be about 6 hours, including a few breaks. When I go round them for a second pass at my planning, sometimes I'll put a note in there about what's the ascent like. You know, am I ascending 400 metres or something during the day? If it's a more remote Camino, I tend to put in, are there any stops along the way? I might put a note of particular albergues or hostels I want to stay in. This is more important for more remote Caminos. I might put in if there's a shop or a bar. The accommodation type, do I have to cook a meal? Don't worry, Mack, your private accommodation, you probably won't. If I booked something, I put that in there. I might make a note of the cost and so on. So, but the key bit here is actually planning the sort of day-by-day walking. So yeah, this is day by day. Now let's go through some of the logic. So I filled in the first 14 days here. And some of the things that I've been considering are, do I really want to stay in the major stage points? So when you hear people talking about the stage points, if you look in one of the guidebooks, let's have a look at one of these days here that we're actually looking at. So this is, oh gee, I need my glasses. Stage 10 is Santo Domingo to Belorado. You know, it's going from one town to another with a few villages along the way. A lot of people look at these guidebooks and they stop where the guidebook starts and stops. You know, you can stop wherever you want, and it helps if you're stopping. The term generally is sort of between stages, between, you know, in the less common stopping places. It can help. It's not so busy, easier to find accommodation and so on. So let me go back then, Mack, and show you the logic of some of the stopping places. So we've talked about going from Roncesvalles to, Valcarlos, Roncesvalles to Zubiri, Pamplona. Let's go back now to Gronze, and we'll start looking at what some of the options might be, and then you could adjust the plan accordingly. So if you really wanted to, I mean, you could go hammer and tongs on day one to Roncesvalles. Most people do walk it in one day. I just wouldn't, not on day one. And you know, unless you're really short of time. I think 2 sort of more gradual warm-up days, you're going to be better for it. I just don't want to get injured on day one, I'm afraid. But so you've got a couple of options there. Is there accommodation in these places? I'm not sure. So coming over the Napoleon route, if anyone's doing that, you can stop in Honto, but that's way too early. You've got Horizon and Border, and then nothing, literally nothing other than a water fountain until Roncesvalles. If we Go back then to the one via Valcarlos. Are there other places to stay along the way? No, it's only Valcarlos, but it's got lots of accommodation options. So let's assume you're going to do Valcarlos, Roncesvalles. I mentioned that I break it up even further by then only going as far as Bicicleta. A lot of people, and actually you might want to think about this, Mack. If you're doing day 2 from Valcarlos to Roncesvalles, it's not that far, it's only 12 k's, you might want to think about going a little bit further. Bergetta is a lovely village, so you're not with the main crowd then. You know, you get a little bit of a quieter time, lots of places to stay there. Someone correct me down below if I got this wrong, but I think it's Hostel Bergetta where... Oh, my memory's going. Who's the famous writer? Death in the Afternoon, all that stuff. Hemingway. Hemingway used to go fishing in Bergetta and stay there. You can go and stay in the room he used to stay in. I'm not sure whether it's that one. I think it was a bit more fancy. Maybe it's this one. That looks pretty fancy, more Hemingway-like, doesn't it? But Bergetta is a nice place. There's a little shop there, so you can pick up, you know, snacks and things. Bicicleta is quite nice. There's a couple of places definitely to stay there. Let's just come down to Bicicleta. Oh, it's 4. I've stayed at Posada Nueva a couple of times. There is in Linsoain somewhere as well, I think. Bicicleta, yeah, Linsoain or Zubiri. So if you go as far as Zubiri, there's lots and lots of places to stay. Zubiri is a choke point on the Camino Frances, just be aware of that. Like Roncesvalles, you know, during busy periods, it gets filled up pretty quick. Zubiri is the same, and that's why I say, you know, book as far as Pamplona generally. But there are some options because you don't have to stay in Zubiri, of course. You know, you might break up this section and let's have a look at what's coming up. Pat and I stayed in Acareta last time. So Zubiri is really nice and it gives you a good walk into Pamplona. You know, it's a lovely place to stay. And in March, Matt, you should be fine. But, you know, April, May, it's getting busy. Make sure you book. I'll show you what's in Acareta, which is interesting. There's only one place to stay. Look at the price, it's gone up. The Hotel Acareta, and if there's any movie buffs, you will recognise this place because in the movie The Way with Martin Sheen, out on this stone area here is where they had that communal dinner where they all started throwing food at him. We stayed there. Oh, it's a glorious place, lovely food, but you do have to book well ahead. It gets very booked out. So I guess all I'm saying here is that there's lots and lots of options. So once your plan is coming together, you might want to go back and say, oh, what about La Rasueña? You know, there's places to stay there too. Now, I know you want to stay in private accommodation, Mac. If I was walking this way again, I reckon I might go and stay in Zabaldica. Zabaldica is a really lovely little village with a beautiful church and some very lovely nuns who give you special prayers as a pilgrim and all the rest of it. So Zabaldica, and then you're into Pamplona. Pamplona is definitely worth staying in. It's a lovely city, lots of options, of course, to stay. If we go to Pamplona, look, click down here for more, there's loads of places to stay. I always tend to stay near the main square, the Plaza Mayor. I tend to do that in most places so that you're sort of part of the action. What about after Pamplona? So if we look at the profile map, you've got a bit of a climb. It's not quite as bad as that as it makes out. But when you come out of Pamplona, you go out past the university, you go to Cesur Menor. There's a bit of a climb up here and then a bit of a steep climb up to Alto del Perdón. So that's going from 400 to 750. It's about a 350 metre ascent. It'll get your breathing heavy going up there. It's not quite as desperate as it looks there, and then you've got a steep descent coming down. It's only for about a K or so that it's you've got to take a bit of care coming down here. We've stayed in Uterga, which is nice. What I would suggest though, and on your plan, which we'll come back to, Mac, I suggested taking this deviation here to Unata. And in Unata is an ancient church, one of these sort of hexagonal churches with links back to the Templar Knights and all this beautiful spot. Lovely walk out there through the fields and then back again. And so you may not want to stay in Puente Lorena, which is, you know, it's an end point in all the guidebooks. It gets busy. It's a lovely place. You might want to stop in Obanos. What's in Obanos? So we can get private rooms. There we go. There's actually no albergo by the looks of it. So, I mean, a bed is a bed to me. I don't see the point in spending heaps on a bed, so I'll go for the €30 one. That looks all right. Is there any feedback on it? So you could, just a tip on booking accommodation. I did mention that booking.com is the easiest way. You see this one isn't on booking.com. If you use WhatsApp, just send them a WhatsApp message. And one of these is the mobile number. I'm probably going to get it wrong. We'll just pause while I look. Which one is the mobile number? The 06. The 06 is the mobile number. So I've got all my WhatsApp hostels and things on my phone. So +34 is for Spain. The 06 is a cell number, mobile number. So you can send a WhatsApp message. All these places are on WhatsApp. So when you send an email, very often they don't respond because they don't get around to them. If you call, sometimes they're busy. You know, these are little family-run places. They might be, you know, cooking, cleaning rooms, whatever. If you send a WhatsApp message, you'll normally get a reply pretty quickly. So just a tip there. Let's have a look at more from the planning perspective. So if it was me, I might go and stay in Obanos, walk through Puente Lorena, which is the Queen's Bridge. Lovely bridge over the river. Now where are we going to go from here? So probably from there I think let's just go back to your plan. Where did we have you going? Went Obanos to Estella to Los Arcos. We deviate a little bit here. Let's just walk through there and I'll explain why. Siriki is a lovely place. Lorca is a lovely place. I've stopped for lunch a couple of times in Lorca on the way to Estella. Just past Estella is where they have the wine fountain. Yeah, you get a few greedy people going to the wine fountain and filling up their water bottles. I think they put 100 litres in each day or something. If you get there by mid-morning, it's all gone. So yeah, just taste a little bit, leave some for others. But that's an interesting photo opportunity. It's just here at Arache. And then you've got an alternative. You can go up. Is it going to show us here? No, so you've got always interesting to look at the profiles. You've got a bit of a hill there. This one actually goes up over another hill, that alternative route. We've always gone this way. Via Mayor, there's a couple of places to stay there. A couple of albergues and a Casa Rural. Los Arcos is a nice place to stay. Did we have you staying there? Yep. So it's got a lovely little square next to the church with a couple of cafes. Great place to just hang out and meet other pilgrims. And then I think we're going to deviate a little bit here. So you could either go from Los Arcos all the way into Logroño. Logroño is an interesting place to stay. One time I've passed through it, and another time we stayed there because they've got a fantastic tapas street. Calle Laurel, I think it's called. Just look up Logroño Tapas Street. And it's like dozens of tapas bars. It's a great place to go and hang out in the evening. But both times, even so, walking on my own and with Pat, I went as far as Biana. When you look at the profile map, this bit gets pretty heavy going, actually. It's really sort of up and down, up and down. It's quite a tiring walk. And I was happy enough to stop in Biana. And there's lots of options there for you, Mack. You've got albergues. There's a very famous albergue there, I think, where they have singing nuns. It's probably this one. Has anyone stayed there? Santa Maria? Where the nuns sing after dinner. And then if you want to go more upmarket, there's lots of private stuff as well. So Biana is a nice place, and it breaks up what would be quite a long day. You know, not for everybody, but Matt, you and I, you know, if we want to walk 25 as a limit, that's quite a hard day because there's lots of up and down. Coming into Logroño is very nice. But if we break it at Biana, where do we go? We might pass through Logroño and have an early lunch or coffee in the morning or something. A couple of times then I've gone as far as Navarrete. And in Navarrete, lots of options. Again, there's a little square in the middle of the village next to the church. If you go into the church, sorry, this wasn't supposed to be like a guided tour. If you go into the church, do go and put a coin in the box to illuminate the church. It's amazing. You know, put €1 in or something and the lights come on for a few minutes. And in that little square, there's a lovely bar that does meals. There's lots of different accommodation. Just off that square, there's a shop where you can buy supplies. So I think we've got you going to Navarrete. So what I've tried to do here is just give you some examples of how you might kind of go off stage a little bit and not stay in all where everybody else stays. I mean, it's still pretty busy wherever you stay, but you know, all the hordes will go from Logroño to Nájera. So I'm suggesting Navarrete, and then maybe we go a little bit past Nájera to Azofra. Sometimes it's nice to go and stay in the little places. I've obviously walked through Azofra, I haven't stayed there, but you've got a couple of options there. And then I'm going to suggest, have a look at the stage here. I seem to remember a hill. Yeah, it's quite a long drag up there. Sirivenya is a really interesting place. It's one of these sort of new towns built in the middle of nowhere. And the idea was that people would move there who were interested. There's a big golf course, you know, and they'd sell all these sort of luxury villas out in the country. I don't know if anyone lives there, but it's this one here, see? The urban area of Rioja Alta Golf Club. You can drop into the golf club for lunch, and then you go through this sort of deserted town unless people have moved in. And then you have a lovely walk into Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo has the church in the centre where there's that story of, you know, they have a couple of chickens in cages in the church. I won't tell the story, go in and have a look. But I'm suggesting, while Santo Domingo is a lovely place, why not change it up a little bit and move on to Granon. So if we come back to the spreadsheet, from Azofra to Granon is only 21 k's. So we're stopping at some of the intermediate places. And does Granon have private accommodation? They do. But lots of other people other than you are going to be watching this video, Mac. And the reason I want to show Granon is this albergue is a very famous albergue as part of the church. I haven't stayed there, but if I ever go through Gronze again, I will definitely stay there. It's a Donativo albergue. The accommodation's actually upstairs, basically in the church. You have a communal meal together. Everybody, you know, it's not compulsory, but I think either before or after dinner, everybody goes into the church, and you know, everybody who's stayed there says it's a wonderful experience. Here we go. Look, 42 pluses. Was there a negative? I don't know. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Somebody's saying an essential experience of the Camino. I can read that in Spanish, but not much else. It's not translating for some reason. Let's just hit that again. No, it didn't want to translate. So I'm suggesting you might want to ring the changes a bit. And you know, this is another reason why it's a good idea not to book too far ahead, because you might get to Santo Domingo and go, oh, I really love this place, I think I'll stay here. You know, that's kind of what the Camino is all about for a lot of people. But I'm suggesting staying in Granon. And then Belorado is a nice little town, but because we've broken up this stage, then what I'm suggesting is we might go on to Villafranca. And that'll be a long day, 27. It's not too bad as I recall. Let's just have a look from Granon. Beautiful walking over agricultural land here, as I recall. a little bit of higher ground and come down into Bellarado, which would be a great lunch stop. And then I'm suggesting you continue on. This is a beautiful walk to Villafranca Montes de Oca and stay here. So you'll notice there's an albergue, St. Anton Abad, and a hotel, St. Anton Abad. They're the same building, so they have an albergue and a hotel. The hotel is wonderful. It's like, if you've come across the Paradors, it's like a really nice hotel in this historical building, lovely meals. So I'm suggesting stay there. Why stay there? Because the next day is quite a trek. You're going up a hill. Let's have a look at the profile. So from Villafranca, we're going up a hill. This is a very steep descent and up again. And then we're coming down to San Juan. And where have I got you stopping next? We're going to go from Villafranca to Burgos? That doesn't make sense, really. That sounds like it's too far. Have I made an error there? Let's have a look. Yeah, I've missed out San Juan. Sorry about that. That sounded like it was way too far. So we're going to go from Villafranca is 12. It's going to be 37 if we went all the way to Burgos. So I would suggest we would probably go to Atapuerca. Atapuerca is a really nice place. If you're into archaeology and all that kind of stuff, there's an ancient sort of Stone Age, Iron Age dig there that you can go and look at. Lots of cool places to stay. And then on into Burgos. And what I would suggest, let's just change. I'm not going to calculate all this on the fly, but what this should really read, we're going to Atapuerca there. I think, yeah, whatever the distance is. So there's an error there, apologies for that. And then I'm saying go on into Burgos. San Juan to Ortega. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to work out this because this is 6.1, and then if we go back to here, 6.1, it's only 18, isn't it? 18.1 from Villafranca to Atapuerca. So that's going to be 18.1. Sorry, the planner in me wants to know what this is. And then, so this is exactly how I sort of do it on the fly. And then we've got 25.8 minus 8.1. We've got 17.7 going into Burgos. There we go. That's what it's actually going to look like now. I've got an error on that one. Excuse me, fixing the spreadsheet while we're talking. There we go. That's looking a little bit better now. So we're going to go from, that actually makes a lot more sense now. So from Gronze to Villafranca is quite a long day, but not too hilly. And then a nice day on to Atapuerca, and then on to Burgos. So by that stage, you're going to want to have a day off. So I put a rest day there, and Burgos is a lovely place to have a rest day. So I'm not going to plan the rest of your Camino, Mac. We've spent long enough on this, I think, but you get the idea. Where would I go? Let's just have a brief look. Where would I go from Burgos? Horneos this is a beautiful walk. This is, you come up onto, after Burgos, you actually come up onto the Meseta. Probably this is it here, the start of the Meseta. Wonderful landscapes. I've stayed in Horneos a couple of times. That was, how much was it, 20? That would be a pretty easy walk for you. If you went on to Hontanas, it's going to be nearer 30. That might be a struggle for you. You've got San Bol, which would be more near your 25, but there's only an albergue there. So, you know, these are all the things to weigh up. Castro Jerez is a lovely place to stay. Coming out of Castro Jerez, you've got a lovely hill. What do they call it? Mill breaker or something, heartbreaker. And you get a lovely view from the top of there. And we're not going to go any further than that, but you get the idea. So let's just recap. Basically, the planning process that I go through is sort of pick the route, do a very rough schedule. How long, does this work? What day am I going to leave home? What day am I going to get back? Play around with the dates so I know roughly how long I need. Then I'm going to start looking at Gronze for time, looking at Guidebooks or Gronze. I tend to just use Gronze these days. Looking at distances and, does this town have lots of accommodation? For example, when we were looking at, Mack might be going through this and thinking, I want to go a bit further than Hornios, I want to go to San Bol, but Mack, you're going to find there's only an albergue there, so you might not want to stay there. I'm told it's great. They have a wonderful communal meal, €12. But if you want private accommodation, there's a couple of negative comments there. If you want private accommodation, that's not going to work for you. So it's 20 k's to Hornios or 30 odd to Ontanas. So those are the sort of things you have to weigh up, not just when you're planning, but when you're actually walking. So I think I've rabbited on enough. This has turned into about a 45-minute video. So yeah, look at Gronze. You might want to look at YouTube videos if you want to find out any more, and then I get into my more detailed schedule, which is sort of what we've been doing here. On the Camino Frances, I wouldn't bother probably putting all of this stuff in. On a more remote one, like our next one with Pat is going to be the Camino Madrid, where there's fewer options, there's no intermediate stops, and so I'd want to know if there's a shop in the place that we're going to so that we can stock up. Do we have to buy food, all that kind of stuff. Camino Frances, it's really not much of an issue. It's just a bit more challenging on some of the other routes where the facilities aren't as frequent. So there we go. Hopefully that has been of some interest. Apologies for the screw up on the spreadsheet. Just jumped out at me there. I thought, Villafranca to Burgos, that's not 27. So there we go. Any thoughts or questions, do comment down below. That, I did warn you, is the detailed planning process. Just to finally reiterate, do you need to do this? Absolutely not. You can literally just turn up on day one with a pack and off you go. The only hesitation I would say is if you're walking a popular route like the Camino Frances during a busy period, you might want to book the first few days. If you take pot luck, you may end up getting somewhere and finding there isn't a bed, and then you have to walk further or get a taxi. I mean, it's not the end of the day. But during the busy periods, the first few days tend to be a little bit more crowded in terms of accommodation. But once you get underway, it gets a lot easier. And of course, it depends on the accommodation type. If you're staying in municipal albergues, donativos, those facilities that you can't book to an extent, they can be a lot easier because people can't book them, they don't book them, they don't stay there. So, it's kind of the other side of the coin. There we go. I'm starting to rabbit. We'll finish there. Any questions or ideas or tips or anything on planning, do comment down below. And finally, yes, I do admit I'm an over planner, but I enjoy doing it. So at the moment I'm planning our next one, which is the Camino Madrid, followed by the last part of the San Andres, and then once we get into Santiago, we're going to bus out to Mochir and walk back from Mochir through Fistera to Santiago. So a little bit of a hybrid to give Pat a bit of a different experience. She's only walked the Frances before. There we go. Stop, Rob. You've talked enough. Thanks for watching and see you next time. My apologies, it took a while to get this video out.